I froze, my hand trembling on the doorknob, as Nathan's voice slipped through the crack of his study door, sharp, smug, slicing through the stillness of our Providence home. "Emma's too busy with her little garden project to notice," he said with a dry chuckle. She signed the papers without a second glance. My heart dropped, a cold weight settling in my chest, as his brother Michael's low laugh echoed back. I, Emma Thompson, 42 years old, a preservation architect who'd spent years saving historic homes, now stood paralyzed in the very hallway of the house I'd poured my soul into, betrayed in my own sanctuary. The Victorian Nathan and I had lovingly restored was no longer a symbol of our shared dream, but a stage for deception. He had forged my signature, removed my name from the deed, and funneled the equity into a shady shell company, Winterfall Properties. The man I'd loved for 15 years had mocked me like I was nothing more than a gullible fool. The hallway tilted around me. I pressed a hand over my mouth, fighting back a sob as the walnut floorboards creaked beneath me. I had only come downstairs to grab my laptop, forgotten in the kitchen after a late-night work session. But Nathan's voice had stopped me cold. I crept closer, the study door ajar just enough to catch every chilling word. "The LLC's finalized," Michael said, "all business. We can leverage the equity for Harborview Heights. She's out of the picture." Nathan laughed again, a sound I once found endearing now felt like a blade twisting in my ribs. "Emma thinks she's saving the world one old house at a time," he said. "She won't see this coming." I gripped the doorframe, my nails digging into the wood I had once sanded and stained with pride. This wasn't just about money. Nathan had turned our marriage into a con, weaponized my trust, and erased me from our story. Backing away, I retreated into the sunroom, our glass haven. Outside, the Japanese maple we planted for our 5th anniversary glowed crimson beneath the streetlight, a once beautiful symbol now corrupted. I collapsed onto the wicker chaise, breath shallow, heart pounding. Had he planned this all along? The late nights at his finance firm, the endless client dinners, the distant looks, were they all pieces of this betrayal? My fingers brushed against my purse, slung over the chair. I pulled it close and unzipped it, needing something, anything, to ground me. Inside, I found the pen I'd gifted him on our wedding day, its sleek surface engraved with Nathan in silver script. I now knew. Without a doubt, he'd used that very pen to sign the forged documents. The irony made my stomach turn. I clenched the pen in my fist. I couldn't afford to fall apart. Not now. The sunroom's silence magnified the chaos in my head. I had always been the dreamer, the one who believed in restoration, who saw beauty in peeling paint and crumbling cornices. Nathan had been the pragmatist, the numbers man. Or so I thought. Now every shared memory seemed suspect. The nights spent stripping wallpaper, the lazy Sundays with wine and blueprints, had they all been rehearsed? The forehead kisses, the quiet reassurances, lies, tears blurred my vision, hot and bitter. I wasn't just losing my home, I was losing the version of our life I'd clung to. The story I thought was real. He hadn't just stolen money, he'd stolen my reality. I stood and began pacing. My reflection stared back at me in the glass, hair in a messy bun, yoga pants, eyes wide and haunted. Outside, our quiet street slept peacefully, unaware that my world was imploding. I thought of Carmichael House, the community garden, the projects Nathan had dismissed as distractions. They were my lifelines. And now he'd turned even my own home into a weapon. The pen felt heavier now, catching the moonlight like a silver dagger. I imagined storming into the study, slamming the papers on his desk, watching his smug grin falter. But Nathan was a master manipulator. I needed more than outrage. I needed evidence. A plan. Allies, Rachel Thomas. My best friend. A real estate attorney who'd never fallen for Nathan's charm. She'd warned me, subtly, gently. And now I needed her more than ever. I slid the pen into my pocket, a cold, metallic vow, and wiped away the last of my tears. The grief was still there, but something else had taken root. Resolve, I crept back upstairs, avoiding the study, their voices still a low hum of conspiracy. In our bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at a photo on the nightstand, Nathan and me at a Preservation Society gala, arms linked, beaming. I turned it face down, the clock read 1:03 a.m., but sleep was out of the question. I picked up my phone and typed a message to Rachel, "Need you. Urgent. Can we meet tomorrow?" I hit send, my fingers trembling. Lying back on the bed, I stared up at the plaster medallion on the ceiling, feeling the house around me, the creaks, the shadows, the history. This was my home, my masterpiece. And Nathan thought he could erase me from it. He was wrong. I'd spent my life saving buildings from destruction. Now it was my turn. The pen pressed against my thigh like a promise. Nathan had underestimated me, but he'd learned soon enough. I was Emma Thompson, and I was just getting started. The buzz of my phone broke the darkness. Rachel's message lit up the screen, 7 a.m., my office. Bring coffee. I clutched the engraved pen in my pocket, its sharp edges grounding me as Nathan's betrayal stormed through my mind. I was Emma Thompson, 42, a preservation architect who had spent years stitching together Providence's past, only to realize my own life had unraveled into lies. The Victorian house I once loved, with its stained glass transoms and heart pine floors, now felt complicit, every wall whispering of Nathan's deception. He had forged my signature, stripped me from the deed, and funneled our home's equity into Winterfall Properties, his latest scheme with Michael. 15 years of trust had crumbled into theft. I had cried enough. Now, I needed proof. By 5 a.m., sleep still elusive, I crept from bed, careful to avoid the creaky third stair. Nathan's snores echoed behind me, oblivious. In the kitchen, the brewing coffee hissed and gurgled, drowning out my racing heart. Through the sunroom window, the Japanese maple stood crimson and still, a silent witness. 2 coffees in hand and laptop slung over my shoulder, I drove to Rachel Thomas's office. Providence's cobblestone streets shimmered under the gray blush of dawn. Rachel, my best friend since our Brown University days, was already waiting, sharp-eyed, razor-minded, and never one to suffer Nathan's slick charm. "Tell me everything," she said, settling into her chair. I laid it out, Nathan's smirked confession, Michael's involvement, the LLC, the fake signatures. My voice cracked describing the way Nathan had mocked my garden project, belittling what he once pretended to support. Rachel's expression hardened. "He's not just an asshole. He's a felon," she snapped, scribbling furiously. "We need real evidence, contracts, bank statements, anything tying him to this fraud." She squeezed my hand as I blinked back tears. "We'll get it back, Emma. Every last piece." My task was clear: break into Nathan's study and uncover the truth. After Nathan left for a client meeting, I moved quickly. His study reeked of cedarwood cologne, once comforting, now sickening. His mahogany desk, a fortress of secrets, stood in the center. I knew his routines too well. The brass paperweight on his nightstand concealed a key taped underneath. Driving home, the Providence skyline blurred behind a curtain of unshed tears. Our house loomed like a hollow shell, a mausoleum of broken promises. Inside, Nathan lounged on the couch, sipping bourbon, wearing the same empty smile. "Long day?" he asked. "Yeah," I said evenly, walking past him, the pen still in my pocket like a blade in its sheath. I wasn't the naive dreamer he had once seduced. I was Emma Thompson, and I was done playing by his rules. Nathan's bourbon glass shimmered under the lamplight, and his casual "long day?" still echoed in my ears as I bolted upstairs, the incriminating photos in my phone searing against my coat pocket. I, Emma Thompson, 42, preservation architect, had become an unwilling spy in my own Providence home. No longer the naive wife Nathan once mocked, I'd uncovered his forged deed, the shell company Winterfall Properties LLC, and $150,000 siphoned from our joint account. But Rachel, Stuart, and Linda had warned me that wasn't enough to bury him. To take Nathan down, I had to bait a trap. At the Harborview Heights investor pitch, I locked myself in the guest room, the only place untouched by Nathan's cedarwood scent. My pulse thundered as I stared at the ornate crown molding above. Rachel's plan was bold: infiltrate the presentation, expose Nathan's fraud in front of his investors, and freeze his accounts before he could disappear. But first, I had to keep up the charade of the loving wife, a role that now made my skin crawl. The following evening, Nathan suggested dinner at Bellini, the Newport restaurant where he had proposed 15 years ago. A special night, he said, his smile too smooth, his touch calculated. I agreed, slipping my phone into my clutch, its voice recorder armed and ready. Beneath chandeliers and soft candlelight, I played the curious wife. It's all about connections, he boasted, sipping Pinot Noir. A few council members owe me. My heart pounded as I hit record. But when his fingers brushed against my phone, I froze, masking it with a laugh about our old date nights. I got the recording, but his lingering glance told me he was watching far more closely than I'd thought. Back home, I discovered something far worse. In the sunroom, my retreat of glass and greenery, I noticed a loose floorboard while watering the Japanese maple. Behind it, a tiny red light blinked. A listening device, its wire snaking into the wall. My blood turned to ice. Nathan had been eavesdropping on every call, every whispered plan with Rachel. I yanked it out with shaking hands and rushed back to the guest room, tearing into the safe again. Inside, I found his old leather journal, pages filled with the names of women he'd conned, each one crossed out like a trophy. At the very bottom, freshly inked, Emma Thompson, complete by Q3. My stomach churned. I wasn't just a casualty, I was the final mark. The next morning, Rachel called with a blow. Winterfall had filed to demolish Carmichael House, the historic estate I'd spent years fighting to preserve, within days. It's a power move, she said. He's using it to raise capital and destroy your legacy. My chest tightened. Nathan wasn't just stealing my home, he was erasing everything I'd built. Worse still, Stuart found a one-way ticket to Singapore in Nathan's email, scheduled for the day after the investor pitch. He was planning to vanish. I drove straight to Sophia's cafe on Wickenden Street and rented the tiny apartment above it, somewhere Nathan couldn't touch. I began relocating keepsakes as photo albums, my grandmother's quilts, to her cottage in Maine, a safe haven he'd never find. Each trip felt like cutting away a piece of my past. I even sold my old engagement necklace and stashed the cash in a separate account. Freedom, I'd learned, had a cost. The riskiest move came late one night. Nathan was out at a client dinner. I slipped into his study, the air thick with his cologne. Using the key hidden in his paperweight, I unlocked his filing cabinet and snapped photos of transfers tied to Winterfall. Then I heard it, his car in the driveway. My heart nearly stopped. I crammed the files back in place, grabbed a random folder, and planted myself at the desk just as the door opened. Nathan stood there, his tie askew, eyes sharp. "What are you doing in here, Emma?" he asked, his voice low and cold. I forced a smile and held up the file. "Looking for my Carmichael notes." He stepped closer, then backed away, mumbling something about taking a shower. I fled to the guest room, breath ragged. I'd made it, barely. To throw him off, I left a voicemail for Rachel from the kitchen, knowing full well Nathan monitored my phone. Swamped with Carmichael House stuff, I said brightly. No time for the financials. A lie to keep him complacent. Later, Rachel called again, voice tight with urgency. She'd found proof of bribes to a Newport planning commissioner to secure Harborview's environmental approval. "We've got him," she said. "But stay sharp, he's dangerous." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. The journal flashed in my mind, his list of victims: Leslie Thornton, Elaine Donovan. Women he'd destroyed. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. That night, in the creaking silence of the guest room, I gripped the engraved pen in my pocket, a gift turned weapon, a symbol of betrayal now reclaimed. Nathan thought he was scripting the ending. But I was rewriting the whole damn story. The investor pitch was coming. And I would be there, ready to burn it all down. Every lie he told, every dollar he stole, was one more match in my hand. I am Emma Thompson. And I'm not running anymore, I'm hunting. My heart pounded as I locked the guest room door, Nathan's journal clutched to my chest, the leather scorching against my skin like a brand. Inside, a chilling list of his past victims, my name etched at the end as his final target. I was no longer just Emma Thompson, 42, preservation architect. I had become something else entirely, a strategist in my own house, an avenger in a life I once mistook for safe. The engraved pen in my pocket, once a wedding gift, had transformed into a bitter talisman of betrayal. It anchored me as I prepared for the final confrontation, Nathan's investor pitch for Harborview Heights at the Marriott. I had the receipts, literal and figurative. Recordings of his boasts. Photos of hidden microphones, evidence of his plan to flee to Singapore. Today, it would all come crashing down. At dawn, I met Rachel at her office on Water Street. Linda Weiss, our divorce attorney, filed the petition and secured a financial injunction. By 8 a.m., Nathan was served at his firm. Rachel's text came quickly, he looked like he'd been slapped. I headed to the Marriott, stomach tight with nerves. Dressed in a black blazer and glasses, I blended into the sea of luxury, Rolexes glittering under crystal chandeliers. The ballroom buzzed with investors as Nathan, looking rattled, took the stage. Michael launched into a hollow sales pitch, all guaranteed returns and faux confidence. I slipped into the back and texted Linda, now. Moments later, she entered alongside Patricia Morales from the State Banking Commission, and 2 uniformed officers. A hush swept the room. I pulled off my glasses and stepped forward, voice slicing through the murmurs. Nathan Winters forged my signature to steal our home, and used it to bankroll this scam. Gasps rippled. Chairs scraped. Nathan paled. Emma, what the hell, he stuttered, stepping forward. I didn't flinch. I raised my phone, playing a recording of Nathan bragging about his city council connections. His own voice, smug and arrogant, filled the ballroom. Eyes narrowed. Mouths tightened. Stuart Chen, our forensic accountant, stepped forward and tossed a binder onto the stage, dozens of flagged transfers, including $150,000 funneled from our joint account to Winterfall Properties. It's all here, I said. He betrayed me, and he's betraying you. Michael, sweating, turned on him. You told me she signed it, Nathan. George Richardson, Harborview's lead investor, rose to his feet, face red with fury. You lied to us, Winters. Then someone, an investor in a Navy power suit, hurled a wine glass at the Harborview scale model. It shattered into glittering fragments, echoing the collapse of Nathan's empire. Patricia Morales stepped forward, voice calm and cold, effective immediately. All Winterfall Properties accounts are frozen. The officers moved. Nathan panicked, bolting toward the exit. They tackled him halfway, pinning him to the marble. As the cuffs snapped shut, he twisted to face me, hatred in his eyes. You'll never escape me, Emma. I pulled the engraved pen from my pocket and tossed it at his feet. The metal hit the floor with a sharp crack. I already have. The crowd parted as they dragged him out. Michael slunk behind them, his betrayal complete. I turned to Eileen Takahashi from the Providence Journal and handed her the journal. Print it. Let everyone see. The room emptied in a storm of anger and disbelief. Rachel rushed to my side, breathless. We stopped the Carmichael demolition this morning. It's safe. My knees buckled. Relief swelled in my chest until my phone lit up, a message from Claire Harrington. You did it, Emma. I'm speaking out now. Another voice rising. Another woman no longer afraid. Outside, Providence gleamed under an October sky. The skyline was sharp, the air clean. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. Not just free. Unstoppable. Back home, I stood in the sunroom. The Japanese maple blazed red behind the glass. The house, once my refuge, now felt like the shell of a life I had outgrown. The deed was mine again, but I didn't need this house to prove anything. The battle had reshaped me. The lies had scorched away the dreamer Nathan thought he could destroy. In her place stood a woman forged in fire. I slid the divorce papers into my bag, ready for whatever came next, because I was Emma Thompson, and I had reduced his empire of lies to ash. Nathan's engraved pen shattered against the Marriott's marble floor, splintered metal ringing in my ears as the officers dragged him away. My final words, I already have, hung in the air like a verdict. His furious glare couldn't touch the steel in me now. I was Emma Thompson, 42, a preservation architect turned survivor turned warrior. I stood amidst the wreckage of his Harborview Heights scam, heart pounding with a blend of triumph and grief. I had exposed his forged deeds, his Winterfall Properties fraud, and his plan to vanish into Singapore's skyline. I'd saved my home, and I'd saved Carmichael House. But as I stepped into the crisp October air of Providence, a text from Claire Harrington appeared. You did it, Emma. I'm speaking out now. That was the moment I knew, it wasn't just my victory. It was a spark. And I would fan it into a blaze. Back in the sunroom, the Japanese maple's crimson leaves seemed to applaud. The Victorian, its heart pine floors and stained glass windows, was mine again, legally and beyond dispute. But it no longer felt like home. Every creak and corner whispered Nathan's lies. So I let it go. I sold the house and moved north to my grandmother's salt-weathered cottage on a bluff in Maine, the Atlantic crashing below like a heartbeat. There, I stripped peeling paint, rebuilt the porch, and exorcised 15 years of deception one nail at a time. The ocean became my soundtrack, its roar washing away the woman who had once trusted too blindly. I wasn't just rebuilding a house. I was rebuilding me, my career with the National Trust for Historic Preservation soared. From Savannah to Seattle, I was sought after to consult on endangered landmarks. My name, once tethered to Nathan, stood on its own. Carmichael House became my proudest restoration. Its saved ballroom now hosted community events I once had to beg for. Still, the journal I'd handed Eileen Takahashi haunted me. The list of women, Leslie Thornton, Elaine Donovan. So many more, devastated by Nathan's greed, deserved more than a few headlines. So I started the Phoenix Fund, a non-profit for women escaping financial abuse. We launched our first workshop at Carmichael House, budgeting, legal rights, resilience. Leslie, a widow who'd lost her life savings, stood at that podium, voice trembling but unwavering. I watched her speak, tears in my eyes. We were rising, together. Nathan's sentencing, 8 years for fraud, wasn't the end. After Michael's suicide, a letter surfaced, detailing more victims and adding 7 more years to Nathan's term. I felt no pity. Only closure. At a Phoenix seminar, I met Anna, a fierce young attorney whose mother had been swindled by Nathan decades earlier. Her eyes burned with purpose. Together, we expanded the fund internationally, with chapters in London and Toronto, each one a direct strike against the legacy of ruin Nathan had left behind. I poured my story into a memoir, Invisible Theft, a raw, unfiltered account of betrayal and reclamation. It hit bookstores, ignited conversations, and filled my mailbox with letters from survivors. Their words mirrored my own story. I read every single one. At night, under Maine's vast, star-soaked sky, I'd sit on the porch with a chipped mug of coffee, salt air filling my lungs. The pen, the journal, the house, they were gone. I kept only one relic, a photograph from our Preservation Society gala, now tucked away in a drawer. I didn't need it to remember who I had been, only to measure the distance I'd traveled. I was no longer Nathan's wife. Not a victim. I was Emma Thompson, a woman who turned pain into power. The Phoenix Fund grew, its logo, a bird rising from flame, etched onto our banners and into my heart. And now, I ask you, what would you do if someone you trusted stole your world? Would you crumble or fight to rebuild it? Share your truth. Your story might ignite someone else's courage, just as Claire's lit the spark in me.